So again, happy Father's Day to all the dads. Do you enjoy that? Yeah. So, some of you, your head's maybe still pounding, ears still ringing. That's what it's, I think, supposed to do. Anyways, so this Father's Day, I wanted to, we're going to come back to that, like what we sung about or what specifically the band went through. But before we get there, before I sort of unpack a little bit of that song, I want to take you for a small trip down memory lane. So this will be a trip for you down memory lane if you're a dad, if you're a mum, if you're a chick, if you're younger. Maybe if you're younger, it won't be a trip down memory lane, but it may be a visioning forward. It might be a visioning forward of perhaps what you're expecting, what you're looking for, what you're longing for. And so it starts with this. So this is what I want you to do. As best you can, and maybe you're not there yet, but you'll be able to vision forward. Okay, so if you're older, I'm not sure what age group that we're working on is older, but I'll let you work that out for yourselves. If you're a little bit older, I want you to do this. Reflect back on that moment of time where you felt for the first time in your life that you were an independent adult. I want you to just take a moment to pause. You can close your eyes. You can reflect back on it. Maybe it was when you got your driver's license for the first time. You were off your L plates. You were free to drive. You were free to cruise the roads at everyone else's risk. But you didn't have to have mum or dad sitting beside you. You didn't have to have anyone in the car. You were free to jump in the car and just drive. And there was that feeling like, I have arrived. I remember when I got it, it looked like this. I got to drive wherever I want, wherever I wanted, as long as I had the money to pay for the fuel. Because I wasn't trying to convince someone to jump in the car with me. Maybe it was that, or it was like when you moved out of home, and maybe for some of you younger people, this is what it's going to be. It's when I get to move out of home, when I don't have those old people telling me what to do. Amen? Hannah? He's the older one, that's right. Maybe that's it. Like when you get to move out of home, or it was when I moved out of home for the first time, when I didn't have them lording over me, that was this moment of independence. Maybe it was when you got a promotion at work, or you decided, I'm going to start my own business, so I don't want the man telling me what to do. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the day that you got married or had kids. I don't know what it was, but there'll be a moment for all of us, if we're old enough at least, that we can reflect back on and that was the time, that was the moment, that was the time when all of a sudden I felt like I was an independent individual. If you're not there yet, there will be a moment of time that will come where you will feel like you are an independent individual. And when that time comes, it brings with us this idea that I am now capable of making my own decisions, my own choices. Anyone seen those memes that go around on Facebook every now and then? It's a video of all these different things that adults do that are really, really dumb. Like really, really dumb that you'd never let your kids do. But they're doing it anyways. And the caption that always comes afterwards, or the thought that comes with it is, have you ever found it so strange and bizarre that I'm just out here living life unsupervised, doing whatever it is that I want to do? Like when we're kids, we're supervised, but then when we become independent, we all of a sudden we're unsupervised and we're making our own decisions. And some of those decisions, like in these memes, they're really, really bad decisions. Like that's how you kill yourself, wreck yourself, or anything like that. They're bad decisions. Anyone seen those memes, or is it only me? I thought everyone watched that stuff, but obviously not. Maybe I'm just the only one. But at some point, we get to this place where we're independent. And what I want to talk about today is this idea of independence, and independence, if it's not coupled specifically, and I'm suggesting for us as Christians, if it's not coupled with God, it leads us down this path that isn't actively helpful or healthy. And when it comes to this idea of independence and doing what it is that I want to do, the people that probably struggle with it the most is us as guys. So specifically this morning, I'm talking to you men. If you're a dad this morning, deliberately I'm talking to you. But if you're not a dad, if you're a younger person, you're a soon-to-be dad, or you're yet-to-be dad, or you're just young, I'm talking to you too, because girls, you're not off the hook at all. There's plenty of this in here for you. Plenty of girls struggle with this idea of independence is the hallmark of adulthood and being able to make my own decision. But for us guys, if we're honest, the thing that really bites with us is that we feel to some degree that manhood and self-governing go together. That the mark of being a man is the ability to make my own decisions, be my own boss, write my own path, determine which way is right, determine which way is wrong. And that's what I have to do. And so this morning, the stuff that we're talking about or looking about is this idea called autonomy. This is the struggle that so many of us have as far as autonomy, being able to determine where I want to go, where I want to do, how I want to behave. And the thing with autonomy is it promises big. Autonomy promises big. It promises this life that is fulfilled, this life that gives us everything, this life that no matter what it is, I can do it, I can become it, and I'm going to enjoy it. And autonomy, really, realistically, the struggle that we have with it is this, that autonomy is talking about that I am capable of being self-governed. I'm going to govern my own ways. I'm going to determine what it is that I want to do, where I want to go, how I want to behave. But what we're going to look at as we go through this morning is that while it promises big, autonomy promises big, self-governing promises big, it generally does this. It underperforms. It promises the world. It promises that you're going to feel fulfilled, that you're going to experience all these things. It's going to be your best life ever if you are self-governing as a guy, self-governing as a girl. You make all the right decisions. And you'll be your own man. And it promises all of that. But generally what happens is it bottoms out. And it doesn't deliver what it talks about delivering. In fact, so the big idea that I want to get across to us all this morning is this. When autonomy takes the wheel, ethics get lost in the shuffle. When autonomy takes the wheel, ethics get lost in the shuffle. And to move on a little bit from that, when autonomy takes the wheel and ethics get lost in the shuffle, this is what happens. People get hurt. People get hurt, you get hurt, your friends get hurt, your family gets hurt, your children get hurt, your parents get hurt, your co-workers get hurt. When autonomy takes the wheel, ethics get lost, and the fallout is you, and the fallout is people. So, to help with this and to unpack this and to look at this, I want to look at a particular person's life or a snippet of their life story. There's this guy in the Bible in the Old Testament. His name is King David, and he's kind of a big deal. Most of you know who he is. Some of you won't. He's like Israel's favorite king. And you know how every king is like always King George, not necessarily the fourth as far as, there's always like a title that comes with him. So David was King David, and he's known throughout the Bible as this. He's a man after God's own heart. He writes all the Psalms, or a large portion of the Psalms, and that are just him expressing his love and devotion and pursuit of God. And throughout his life, he's pictured as a man chasing after God's own heart. Like, he's a godly man, he's a good man. Every path that he tries to go down, he wants God to be there with him. Just like most of us as dads, we want to go on a good path because we want to leave a good legacy for our kids. We want to leave a good legacy for the people around us. We want to do a good job of this life. And that's what King David is aiming for. And that's why he strives to be this king that is a man after God's own heart. However, just like you might have started well, just like David started well, but at some point, this allure, this myth of self-governing autonomy seeps in, and he starts falling off the bandwagon. There's this story in 2 Samuel 11 where it says this: in the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab, like that's his military leader. That's his captain. That's who's in charge of the army. He sends Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David did this. He stayed behind in Jerusalem. Now, this is really important. If you're a dad here, this is really important. You need to get this. If you're a girl here, if you're a woman here, if you're just a human being here, you need to get this. This is really, really fundamental and important. In the Old Testament, like the symbol of the presence of God, it was this thing called the Ark of the Covenant. Now, to get a picture of it, it's not this at all, but the size of it, kind of the idea of it, like think of a sailor's chest or something like that. It's relatively big. It can hold stuff. It's the Ark of the Covenant, and that was the symbol of the presence of God. Today, the symbol of the presence of God would be the cross. The cross where Jesus was crucified, that's the symbol of the presence of God. And that goes before us, that goes with us, and that sort of thing. The same thing in the Old Testament, before Jesus came, died on the cross, was raised back to life, and then the cross becomes a symbol. It was this thing called the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the laws that God had given the Israelite people. It contained the 10 Commandments. It contained a couple of other things were in this thing called the Ark of the Covenant, and that was the symbol of God's presence. And this is really important. This is really important. We need to get this, and we need to understand this. So what would happen when the army went out to war? What would happen was the Ark of the Covenant, this is important, the Ark of the Covenant would go with the army. And on top of that, it would go in front of the army. So the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, was leading the troops into battle. This is where God was leading them. So in the spring, when God would call the armies of Israel out to fight, he would go before them. He would lead the way. And so what's happening here and what's being highlighted is that the Ark of the Covenant is where? It's gone out to the battlefield. And David makes this self-governing decision, just like so many of us make. The best thing that I could do is be right here. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to look after the kingdom. I'm going to delegate. So the soldiers, Joab, he's going to look after the army. He's going to go out to war and fight on my behalf. I'm going to delegate. I'm going to stay here. I've got things to do here. But where's the presence of God? The presence of God isn't where David is. The presence of God has gone elsewhere. And this is important. We need to get this. As guys, as girls, as human beings, we need to understand this, that David made a deliberate decision that I am going to send the ark and the army with the symbol of the presence of God elsewhere, and I'm going to choose to stay here. This is David, the man after God's own heart, making a deliberate decision. I'm going to choose self-governing autonomy. I'm going to stay here and I'm going to be good. It's all going to be good. That song that the band played by Ashes Remain, it's kind of talking about a similar theme. It's talking about a similar picture. It's talking about a similar idea. When it gets to the verse, it says this. It says, "Break me out from the prison of my own pride." Who struggles with that? Human beings in general, but specifically us as guys. Why do we struggle with that? Because we think that we are capable of making all the right decisions that need to be made. I'm capable of making the decisions that will lead my family well. I'm capable of making the right decisions that are going to lead me well. I'm capable, and I need to. The mark of manhood is being the one making all the decisions. I think it was last week, that I thought the mark of manhood was leading my family in, and basically I thought it looked like this, dictating to my family how we would handle finances, how we would do this, how we would do everything. And this is what I did specifically with that. I decided how I would lead my family. I never stopped and pondered and asked this question, Jesus, how are you asking me to lead my family? And so what Ashes Remain is singing about is this idea that we have this problem, that the prison from my own pride, the pride being this, that I am the one that needs to make the decisions. And you know what? When I make the wrong decision, because I'm self-governing and I'm able And the mark of manhood, of being a mature human being, is this self-governing. I can make all the decisions. When I make a bad decision, I will work out the next decision to deal with that, to cover that up, to make that work. We need to be, so they're singing about this, break me out from the prison of my own pride. My God, I need a hope that I can't deny. In the end, they're singing, in the end, this is what they're saying, in the end, I'm realizing this, that I was never meant to fight on my own. This is what they're singing about. This struggle that every person has with, I'm out here trying to make all the right decisions on my own. That was never the plan. That was never the plan. That was never the plan for dads. That was never the plan for men. That was never the plan for mothers. That was never the plan for women. That was never the plan for youth. We're never meant to try and fight on our own. So David, back to the story of David. So David decides that he's going to, in the spring, when kings normally go to war, send the presence of God out here. I'm going to send him out. He's going to go there. I'm going to delegate. I'm going to stay back because I'm a capable, self-governing individual, just like you, just like me. We are capable, self-governing individuals. I reckon that you've made capable, self-governing decisions. Maybe those decisions was, I'm going to bail on this job and go to this job before I've got a job. Maybe it's, this is how we're going to handle our finances without seeking counsel, without praying. This is how we're going to raise children. This is how. Maybe you're the same thing, that you've made self-governing, apparent wise decisions, or maybe you're in the process of making those decisions because you are wise. You are wise. And so this is the story of David. It continues to unfold. It says this, late one afternoon, remember this. This is important. Remember this. The presence of God has gone. The presence of God isn't in Jerusalem with David anymore. The presence of God is leading David this way, that David has stayed here in Jerusalem. And then this is what happens. This is how the story continues to unfold. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, David got out of bed and was walking on the roof of the palace. The palace was tall. It was high. You could climb up, walk along it, and you could see over the city. You could see everyone's rooftops, and it's a hot climate. And so this is what they do. They go up there, walk around with the fresh breeze that's blowing in, that's coming in. So after his rest, he climbs up, and he's up there. He's walking around. He's thinking. He's probably thinking about, what do I need to do? I've got this problem in my life. Like, I've got this problem with the kingdom. How do I do this? And then something catches his eye. Someone catches his eye. It says this: as he looked out over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He notices this girl and he looks at her and he's like, she's smoking hot. She is so attractive. I can't keep my eyes off of her. And not only that, he watches as she derobes because she's about to take a bath. No one takes a bath with clothes on. That's weird. You understand what's happening? And so what he's doing is he's gawking. He's staring. He's like, I cannot take my eyes off her. She's so beautiful. And he watches and he's like, she's taking a bath. And he's like, I need to discover who this woman is. I've never seen her before. I've never seen such beauty. I need to find who this woman is. And so he sends his delegates. He's like, who is this person? You need to tell me who lives in apartment B over there. Like, who is this person? Go and find out who she is. I need to know her name. And they come back and like, her name is this. Her name's Bathsheba. Like, da-da-da-da-da. And so that's the story that comes back. And then he does this. Then David sent his messengers to get her. So he discovers who she is, sends his messages to get her, and then when she came to the palace, he slept with her. This is the wise, governing, man after God's own heart king. Just like some of you. In fact, I'd suggest that all of you here are wise people. Why? Because you're in church. And that's actually not even meant to be a joke. I'm not saying people outside of church aren't wise either. Just my note is this, and I'm sorry if this offends people that aren't in church or connected with church or anything of the sort, specifically if you're just gazing online for the brief second. Generally, people in church are really deliberate and wanting to have their lives worked on. I know there's plenty of people in church that just come to church for the sake of it and don't allow their lives to get bettered or anything like that. But generally there's at least an effort of, I realise that I'm a bit of a mess and I've got a few problems and I need to be worked on. I've got some things going on in my life that I need to outwork. And so generally people in church, we all make some really stupid things. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that wisdom means you don't make dumb decisions. We all make dumb decisions every day of the week. I am the chief of them. If you want to know about them, talk to my wife and she'll be able to present you a book. And it'll probably be bigger than your book because I've made some whoppers, really bad ones. And so this is what David does. The wise, mature king, man after God's own heart, just like some of us, wise, mature, I am on a pursuit to get to know, to connect with God, sends the presence of God out, walks around on top of his roof and like, my goodness, look at this woman. She's beautiful. I've got to discover her, invites her in, and because he's the king, he can do whatever he wants. So he sleeps with her. Self-governing autonomy. The myth of it is that the mark of manhood, of maturity, is the ability to make my own right decisions. This is exactly what David is doing. The story continues on. This is what happens next. You can see what's happening next. If you don't know the story, you can see what's happening next. If you know, it gets bad. Later, when Bathsheba discovered that she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying this, that she's saying, I am pregnant. Now, what would you do? Because you've got to realize this. She was married. She wasn't a single lady that he could just put a ring on and make it all better. She already had someone else's ring on her finger. She was already married. The king has committed adultery. And not only that, he has committed adultery with one of his soldiers' wives. One of his soldiers that he has sent out to war, one of his soldiers that has gone with the presence of God, he has committed adultery with one of his wives. And he's like, I've made a big mistake. And because I'm a self-governing, wise individual, and I've made a big mistake, I need to make this right. I need to make this right. I need to work out what I can do to fix this problem. I've created a mess. Now I am going to fix it because I am wise. I am self-governing. I can do this. I can do this. And so this is what David decides to do. I will bring her husband back from the war. And that way, we've got enough time now. I'll bring him back now and all will be well because he will go, he will sleep with her and then he'll go back to fight and then she'll give birth. He'll be none the wiser. He'll just think that it is his child. This is what I'll do. This is what I'll do. So this is what he does. He sends and brings Uriah back, her husband. And when he comes back, he decides that I'm not going to go in and enjoy the company nor pleasure of my wife. I'm not going to do it because I'm a bit uncomfortable about all of this because we're meant to be out fighting. The presence of God's out there. The army are out there. I can't do this. And David he's beside himself and he's bewildered. Like, why won't you do this? Why won't you go in and sleep with her? I can't do this, he says. So David tries another trick. He's like, I will get him drunk. That will work. I will get him drunk. And because he's drunk, all common sense will go out the window. All rationale. And he's like, he'll get so lustful when I fill his belly full of grog. So he does that, but still Uriah won't do anything. So what he does in the end, he ends up sleeping on the doorstep of the palace and refuses to go in and sleep with his wife. In fact, when David questions him, he comes back and he says this, Uriah replied, the ark of the armies of Israel and Judah, they're living in tents. They're living in tents. This is his response to David. They're living in tents, and Joab, being the captain, he's going to become a player in a minute. And Joab, they're doing this. They're camping in the open fields. How could I go home to wine, dine, and sleep with my wife? While this is happening, how could I go home to wine and dine and sleep with my wife? So David does here what so many of you would do. That's not working, so I need to do something else. You ever got potentially busted for something at work? And you're like, if I tell this little white lie, it'll never come back to me. I know it won't come back to me. It won't come back to me, but if I tell it, I'll get out scot-free. That's what he's trying to do. he gets to a pretty bad degree of a little white lie, as we're about to find out in a minute. But we all do something similar. Maybe some of you younger people, it looks like this. You have the opportunity to cover your tracks by making it look like your sibling did it. Anyone done that? Well done. Well done. I've done the same thing as well. I'm going to cover my tracks and make it look like my sibling did it. And they will never know. Mum and Dad will never know. No one's ever going to know, but I will get out scot-free. That's what David's trying to do. He's trying to get out. It's like you telling that little white lie. It's like you scrambling to cover things up at work to make it look like that you didn't actively do that. It's like you covering the mess that you made at home and blaming it on your sibling, and they're so confused. And this is exactly what it's like. So this is what David does, because he can't get him to sleep with her, so he reverts to something else, and it's pretty big. It's really big. And I'd suggest that none of us would go to this extreme, but all of us would at least go to some extreme to cover our tracks. To cover our tracks. When autonomy takes the wheel, ethics go out the door, and who gets hurt? People get hurt. This is what David does. So he sends, the next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab. He's the chief. He's in control. He's leading the army. He writes a letter to Joab, and he gave it to Uriah to deliver. And this is the contents of the letter. None of you will go this extreme. I'm confident. None of you will go this extreme, but we will go maybe to the edge. This is just too big for, I think, any of us to jump over. But we will go as far as we can. Why do we want to go as far as we can? Because we are self-governing, capable, apparently, individuals. This is what the letter said. The letter instructed Joab, station Uriah on the front lines where the battle is fiercest. And then I want you to do this. Then I want you to pull back so that he will be killed. This is organized murder. The man after God's own heart, the wise king, the self-governing, wise king, able to make good decisions, ends up doing this. Seeing a girl, lusting over her, inviting her in, sleeping with her, discovering she's pregnant, bringing her husband home, trying to convince and trick him to go and sleep with her to undo it. When none of that works, he's like, I'm just going to completely take him out of the picture so that I can marry her, and then everything will be fine. We all do the same thing. We all struggle with this. We all do this. And this is ultimately, this. When autonomy takes the wheel, ethics get lost in the shuffle. When ethics get lost in the shuffle, what happens? People get hurt and people get burnt. You may not see it. You may not see it straight away, but in the end, people get hurt. And this is exactly what David is doing. And this is exactly what you and I do. You and I all do something similar. You don't go to the extreme. I'm not suggesting any of you go to the extreme of trying to organize a hit or carry out a hit on a person. But we all do this. We all, at some point in our life, stand up on our castle. We all stand up on our castle and overlook the city, so to speak, the place that you have influence over, the area or the realm that people listen to you, the area that you work at. We overlook our family, we overlook our kids, we overlook at all of that. And then we see something that we want. You know what? There's nothing wrong with noticing, like David notices a beautiful woman. There's nothing wrong with noticing a beautiful woman. There's nothing wrong with noticing that I could get myself out of this predicament if I did this. If I said this, did this, I could get out of this whirlwind of a disaster that I'm finding myself in. If I did this, I could get out of it. There's nothing wrong with noticing any of that. What's wrong with it is this: when we invite it into our lives. when we invite it into our lives, ethics go out the door. Ethics get lost in the shuffle and people get hurt. The wise king, the man after God's own heart, makes these wise, apparent decisions. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to send the presence of God out here. I'm going to make this choice. Not to follow the presence of God and stay right here and make all the decisions myself without consultation from God and expect a good outcome. Dads, here's a question for you. Where are you in relation to the presence of God? How deliberate are you, dads, at allowing the presence of God to come in and minister, speak to you, encourage you, guide you? How deliberate are you at welcoming God into your life, into your decision making? How deliberate are you at doing that? Or are you more deliberate and more focused about manhood looks like my ability to self-govern? The truth is this, that any one of us is capable of anything when we distance ourselves from the presence of God. Every single one of us, whether you're a dad, whether you're a mom, whether you don't have kids, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a youth, any of us is capable of absolutely anything when we distance ourselves from the presence of God. And so this is what David does. His first decision, self-governing, autonomous decision is this. The presence of God is going to go that way. I'm going to go this way. And that might look like this. I'm tired this morning. I'm not going to go to church. I'm tired this morning. I just can't be bothered going to church. It's been a big weekend. It's been a big week. I've got a big day tomorrow. I'm just not going to go to church. I'm not going to be deliberate at positioning myself in the presence of God. I just can't be bothered engaging in prayer. I'm not going to position myself in the presence of God. I've got this decision to make. I'm trying to work out how to work around these things. I'm not going to deliberately seek out wise, godly counsel that can pray with me and invite that in. I don't do that. I'm going to work out this. I'm going to write down 2 lists. I'm going to write the pros of the decision that I'm trying to make and the cons of the decision I'm going to make. And in my wise counsel, I'm going to make it myself. Presence of God is here. David stays here. Presence of God is here. So many of us live our lives over here. But the thing that I love about David's life is it doesn't stop there. David doesn't stop there. He doesn't become the man after God's own heart just because he was good at the start. See, the truth is this. It doesn't matter how we start. It matters how we end. Some of you, perhaps like David, started this season off on the wrong foot of deliberately walking away from the presence of God and looking over and inviting that into our world. And it's got you in strife and it's got you in trouble and it's got you in some red hot water. But you know what? It doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you end. It matters how you end. And this is important because this is what I can promise you. This is what I can guarantee you. If you are a self-governing, autonomous individual, this is my promise to you, that your Achilles heel will be your dependency on I can self-govern. Your Achilles heel will be that. And if it hasn't already, the downfall that you will have is your choice to be self-governing. It will cause you and your life and the people around you to crumble in one way or another. Not on the scale of David. I'm confident of that. None of you are going to do that. Not on that scale, but it will cause a downfall. But even if you're in the midst of that, it doesn't matter how you start. It matters how you end. You see, David, he's known as the man after God's own heart, not because he started so humbly, not because he didn't make bad decisions. He made really bad decision here. David's known for a lot of things, but chiefly it's this, being the man after God's own heart. And that's for this reason that I love and admire most about David, that when he is confronted, when God confronts him on all of this that he's done wrong, he doesn't continue to try and hide it, shove it under the carpet, pull the king card, like I'm the king, depart from me, I'm just going to do what I want for the rest of my reign. He doesn't do that. He realizes this, that, yep, I have sinned. I haven't done what was right. I haven't done what was right in God's eyes. I haven't done what was right at all in the lives of these people that I have destroyed. I have sinned against God and I've sinned against people. And he does this, he repents. And he says, sorry, I shouldn't have done this. And he repents, so you can't bring him back to life. But he stands there in the presence of God, in the presence of the court, when he's eventually confronted and he says, I did wrong, I was sorry. And that's important because it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you end. And David ends up leaving a legacy of this. A legacy as being known as the man after God's own heart. And I think that is paramount to us as dads. The question would be, if you're a dad this morning, especially just talking to the dads for a moment, if you're a dad this morning, what legacy is it that you are leaving for your kids? All of us find ourselves in a position figuratively similar to David's, not to that extreme. The question is, when confronted, and maybe for some of you, you're getting confronted by the Holy Spirit now of, my gosh, I've been running my own race and it's destroying me and it's destroying people. The legacy is this: when you're confronted with that, what do you do with it? What do you do with it? Do you repent, or do you choose to turn a blind eye and continue on my own self-governing, trying to work this out way myself? What do you do? So the question that I want to leave you with, and I want to end with this, or the thought that I want to leave you with, the statement that I want you to reflect on and put in place. The next time, this is the question that I want you to ask yourself. The next time you find yourself, like David was, on top of your palace, overlooking the city, overlooking your life, that place that you have influence over, overlooking all of that, when you look over that and you see that option of you're at the crossroads and I can either choose to go this way with the presence of God, or I'm going to choose to go that way, away from the presence of God, and invite that into my home that continues to create havoc after havoc and destroy my life and someone else's life. When you're at that crossroads, when you're overlooking at that white lie that I can tell, that scheme that I can come up with to get out of it, that story that I can spin, that thing that I can put in place so mum thinks that they did it and that I didn't do it. When you're at the crossroads, this is the question that I want you to pause and ask yourself. The question is simple. The question is this: what would Jesus do in this situation? So many of you will know this statement. 90s, 2000s, something like that, wristbands all came out with WWJD written on them. What would Jesus do? And it's so simple, but it's so profound, because all of us, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's later in the week, will find ourselves at the crossroads, standing on top of our castle, looking over and seeing the beauty in front of us, seeing the temptation in front of us. And the opportunity will be this: I'm going to either pursue the presence of God, or I'm going to go this way. So next time you're there, how about you do this? Ask yourself, what would Jesus do? And I think this is what Jesus would do. Jesus would always take that road that owed up to the truth. Maybe the dilemma that's in front of you is, if I can spin this story, if I can tell this little white lie, if I can do that, it's going to make me look better. And you know what? No one will ever know. No one's ever going to find out, but you do. You will. This is what Jesus would do. He would be truthful. In that moment, he would be truthful. Maybe if you're younger, you have the opportunity to flip the narrative, make it look like your sibling, your sister, your brother did that. What would Jesus do? Jesus would own up. This is what I did. I did this, they didn't do this. When you have that opportunity maybe to have it back at someone because they did wrong to you at some point, and you're standing at the crossroads of going this way with the presence of God or going that way, what would Jesus do? Jesus wouldn't retaliate. The next time you're at that crossroad, ask yourself this question: what would Jesus do? This is important. This is important because I know some of us, for so many of us, myself included, have spent our lives We've spent our lives going the opposite direction because apparently we're self-governing, wise individuals. And maybe at this moment you're realizing that hasn't worked out quite well. But it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you end. And your legacy, the legacy, dads, that we leave our kids will be found in how we end. How about you stand? I want to pray for you. Father, I want to say thank you for the example that you gave. Jesus, that when you came to earth, that you had options of being self-governing. In fact, the devil even tempted you with being self-governing. If you do this, if you bow down and worship me, I'll give you all of this. And you never responded with self-governing, what's going to gratify me, what's going to help me, what's going to support me. But you always remained governed by your Father, governed by God. And Jesus, we want to pray that you empower and embolden every single one of us to do the same thing, that when we are standing on top of our balcony, overlooking the city, overlooking the life that we have influence over, the world that we are invested and engaged in, that you enable us, that you challenge us, that you confront us with that question of what is it that you would do? And I pray that all of us can do this. When we find ourselves at that crossroads, make a decision to go with your presence rather than our own desires. I pray that as we do that as dads, God, I pray that we do this. We leave a legacy as individuals, as men, as dads, that are human beings pursuing a relationship with you. And I pray that that legacy is picked up by our children and our children's children. In Jesus' name.